So you'll have to speak up for a while.
Sounds good. I can speak up.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you
That
really good.
helps a lot.
Perfect. We will call today's November 8th Truckee River Flood Management Authority board meeting to call to order. You could roll call, please.
All right. Donald Abbott,
Here.
Alexis Hill,
Here.
Ed Lawson,
Here.
Naomi Dewar,
Here.
Clara Andriola,
Present.
Miguel Martinez. That's the roll call. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Ms. Stewart, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Item D, public comment. Do we have any public comment? No. Perfect. I don't see anything on Zoom either. Mr.
Chair,
Wall, yeah,
Could I please read a statement for those
of course, Mr. Walls.
wishing to participate by phone? Those who wish to make public comment by telephone may do so by calling 1-253-215-8782 and using access code 861-1853-2620. If you are unable to access the meeting with that number, please call Michael Walls at 775-813-1662. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Item C, approval of the agenda for the November 8th, 2024 Board of Directors meeting. Motion by Mr. Lawson, second by Ms. Andriola. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Item D, announcements and clippings. Mr. Robeson.
Yeah, I have a few announcements today. I am happy to tell you guys that we just won a $1.175 million FEMA grant for the Rock McCarran design. We've been working on videos for flood awareness, and all the footage has been taken, interviews. Donald was the star, he was interviewed. So there were lots of interviews, and that is coming, probably going to be here for the December meeting. So that's moving along as well. And that's all the announcements I have. There is some really cool flood pictures in the clippings that Marty Swenson, our office specialist, put together. So you can see some of those here. Very, goes all the way back to 1907. So anyways, that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Robeson?
I guess I have a question.
Ms. Dewar.
Yeah, so George, when do you expect to have, are you going to have like any event that goes with Flood Awareness Week, or what are you planning? Did I miss that? Or-
We are going to participate in a high watermark presentation, Danielle and myself, out at Washoe Lake. And we are a little too early for our videos. When we get our videos, I plan on doing kind of a real strong outreach to media. And Donald and I have both talked about maybe getting together and doing some interviews and maybe using that video in conjunction with those interviews, but it won't be in time for Flood Awareness Week.
So I didn't, what's that?
Miguel just.
Okay. So so is there an event with the other group at Washoe Lake then?
It is with, mostly led by the state. It is at the state park.
State Park at Washoe Lake.
Yeah.
We, at Western Regional Water Commission yesterday, we heard, I think it was Wednesday, we heard that Washoe Lake is no longer, has a dam now, or, between Washoe Lake and Little Washoe Lake. And so it seems like it's acting like a terminal basin instead of going to Steamboat, instead of going to Little Washoe Lake. And so since you mentioned Washoe Lake, I wouldn't normally bring it up, but all of that could end up at Truckee, but maybe it isn't. So I don't know. It's maybe something you want to follow up on with. I think it was Bill Hawk, and they're going to be doing a study, and Aunt Clara was there too. They're going to be doing a study on it, and they spoke about it. So just of interest to you.
Yeah, and we've been, they talked to me about the dam there
Yeah.
several times, even as a consultant before I had this job. And It's still connected. It still goes, Little Washoe still goes into Steamboat and yeah, so it's still connected.
My point is, they're going to do a study,
Yeah.
and you might want to be part of that. That's
Okay,
all.
okay.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Lawson, you're good? Oh, yeah. Oh. Good to go. Perfect. Then we'll move on to items, the consent items. Looking for a motion of consent items 2A, 2B, 2C, 2D.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Ms. Dewar, a second by Ms. Andriola. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Item 3, presentation and discussion of the auditor's financial and compliance reports and management comments for fiscal year 2023-2024, FY 2024. Possible action to accept auditor's financial and compliance reports and management comments for FY 2024 for possible action. Ms. Crowley. And Mr. Sharper.
Good morning, Deborah Crowley, Turfma for the record, CFO. I'm just going to introduce you to David Schaefer from Bernard Vogler, and he will go over the highlights of the audit. And if you have any questions, we're here to answer.
Hello. Yeah, my name's David Schauper. I'm a director with Bernard Vogler and Company, and we performed the audit of Turfma's June 30th, 2024 financial statements. So the board packet has 2 items in it. One is just a standard required letter to state our responsibilities in the financial statement audit and that we didn't have any difficulties. And it's really just a summarization. There's nothing too important in there. Then also in the board packet, there's the audit of financial statements for 6/30/24. So there's 2 letters in there. One is the report on the audited financial statements, and this just states that the financial statements are material in all respects, which is considered an unmodified opinion, which is the opinion that you want. So I don't think it's really too necessary to go through the numbers of the entire financial statements, as I'm sure Deborah has went over those numbers previously. I guess I would like to point out that this in note 8, states that there's a $17 million commitment to the PLPT, so that hasn't been recorded as an expense yet in the financial statements. And then last, there's a report near the end, report on internal control over financial reporting and compliance.
To accept. Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thanks.
Item 4, proclamation and possible action to acknowledge November 10th through November 16th, 2024 as Nevada Flood Awareness Week.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is our annual Flood Awareness Week proclamation, which you are welcome to read. And I would say before that, I would just like to expand on what Director Robeson mentioned. We are participating in a public outreach event related to flood awareness during the week of November 10th through the 16th. The event is at the group area at Washoe Lake State Park. It's on November 13th. That's Wednesday, I believe. And there's an unveiling ceremony for the high water mark that starts at 9 a.m. And then it's roughly 45 minutes to an hour for that ceremony. That's put on by the Nevada Silver Jackets program. And after that, we're going to do an outreach event with, I believe it's Pleasant Valley Elementary School. And so we'll be there doing a lot of outreach events and hands-on work with them. So the public is welcome to attend. And if you like, I can forward that invitation to you. And to your comment, Director Dewar, as far as the study that's going on, as you know.
At Washoe Lake?
Yes.
Oh.
So I represent the agency on the NNWPC, and I was involved in those conversations about funding and voted to fund that study. So we'll be involved in that for sure, myself and Director Robeson. And with that, sir, if you would like to read the proclamation, we have a copy for you to sign. And
I can gladly read it.
All right, great.
We'll do it, and then I think we have a photo op after. So, Nevada Flood Awareness Week. Whereas the Truckee River Flood Management Authority recognizes the significant threat that flooding poses to our residents, our businesses, the region, and our local economy. And whereas our community has endured repeated floods from the Truckee River watershed, including many historic floods, most notably the flood of 1997. And whereas we can reduce the risk and help our community be more resilient by educating residents and businesses on actions they can take to prepare for floods. And whereas during Nevada Flood Awareness Week, local, state, and federal agencies are working together across Nevada to inform the public about the dangers of flooding and how to protect their homes and families from a flood and plan for recovery. Now, therefore, the Truckee River Flood Management Authority is hereby proclaimed November 10th through November 16th as Nevada Flood Awareness Week and urges all citizens to increase their awareness of the risks of floods by visiting www.nevadafloods.org to learn how to prepare and take action. Woo. And then I think we want to do a quick photo, right? Everybody would like to we could probably line up back here. That's what we normally do, or we can come out there, whatever. We usually just push the chairs kind of one way.
You just want us right up here.
Yeah, same as these.
Yeah.
I think Stuart, you can back here.
Nobody says cheese anymore. That was so cool. All right. So I got a couple pictures.
It's kind of cheesy.
It made you smile.
Awesome.
Hungry all of a sudden.
Oh. Perfect. We'll move on to item 5. Thanks, Ms. Henderson, for that too as well. Item 5, presentation. Oh,
No.
what? Oh,
We didn't actually hold the vote, so.
perfect. We will ask for public comment again. Perfect. I don't have any cards. Looking for a motion to accept the proclamation.
Move to approve.
A motion by Ms. Andriola, second by Mr. Lawson. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you guys for keeping me on target there. Item 5, presentation and update on the status of the mitigation and restoration projects funding agreement with the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe, the establishment and transfer of funds to the mitigation and restoration projects escrow fund, the status of the Clean Water Act for the 404 and Rivers and Harbors Act 408 permits pending before the United States Army Corps of Engineers, and the status of the design work for the Rock Boulevard to McCarran Boulevard flood project segment. Mr. Robeson.
Yeah, and a partridge in a pear tree. But can you go ahead and bring the slides up? Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so, it doesn't, you guys have seen this slide probably too many times, or a version of it. But what I want to move your eyes towards is down at the overview of the presentation. First of all is why the project, I just want to remind ourselves the reason for the project agreement. Well, first of all, with the project agreement that we're doing with the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe, that gives us a great opportunity to bring to an end, a successful end, the application for a permit for the Vista Narrows project, and to really kick off this project in earnest. And so last week, I wanted to let you know, I met with some people from the Army Corps of Engineers that are in permitting, and we discussed this in detail about what has changed, what's going on, and we're going to try to move this forward quickly as fast as we possibly can. It has been in the permitting process since 2020. Then also do the findings of the work, the PMR models, and doing the project and putting it actually into that model. Now we have a very defensible, government-approved model of exactly what the effects of this project are and how it would work. So The other thing that we found, though, is because, and I'll cover this more later, but the Rock to McCarran Reach really gets impacted by the sealing off of the upper river there, especially at GSR and at the airport. So because of that, there's a lot more water in there and it can do a lot more damage in that reach. So that reach needs to be done before that. So now we're bringing that up faster. And we are also looking at ways of financing this more quickly, both in grants and in loans. I talked to a director of a national loan program that's much cheaper than bonding last week as well. So that was with the Army Corps program. So there's a lot of things going on right now, a lot of moving parts. And because of all these moving parts and things changing, including deauthorization that will probably happen in the next 3 weeks, that bill will be passed and we will be officially deauthorized. There's so many things changing that I think it's good to do a comprehensive plan with the schedule, with the costs. We're going to have new costs from Rock to McCarran because of the recent work we're doing. With all this going on, I felt like it's time to come up with a comprehensive plan and show you exactly where this thing is going in terms of timing, in terms of costs, in terms of financing. So that I'm planning that for next month. I've already talked to Director Abbott about this, and I've actually talked about to some others about this. It is time for this because I think we can really actually put some realistic times on where I actually have some real ideas about when it might happen, because some of our biggest constraints, which is the permitting, are starting to come free with this tribal agreement. So that's a key thing that's going on, and that's part of the presentation. Go ahead. So, the major reason is, of course, all that stuff in red comes out, and that represents, in a flood like the 1997 flood, over a $2 billion loss in jobs, in materials, in property, infrastructure. Those three areas, over $2 billion, and that was in 2018. Now it would be even more because there is more stuff there, just basically, and inflation as well. Next slide, please. Of course, the reason we do VISTA, these are just reminders, is because VISTA keeps the water level at or lower than what it was without the project, so we're not hurting other people by doing the project. And anybody that we hurt downstream, we're mitigating and minimizing and making the situation better. We can do that downstream. It's very difficult to do that in the Meadows area. So that is why Vista Narrows exists, is for that reason. It's the cheapest way and the most most environmental, economic, and everything else way to handle the situation. And we're actually improving the river environment while we're at it. So it's just a triple win in that area, and that's why Vista Narrows is the first project, because it has to lower those water levels. Next slide, please. And when we're looking at the terracing project, just a reminder, if you look at that picture, not so much the words over there, but the picture, you can see that there's native vegetation, there's complexity of the banks, we're improving the habitat, we're actually creating wetlands as well as repairing habitat in there, and we're spreading out that water so the water level isn't quite as high in that area and slowing the water down. But overall conveyance is higher at higher flows, so it allows the water level upstream to be lower. It's not backed up as much. So it does a lot of positive things, and it also brings the river into a more natural, what it was before the stream cleaning event back in the 1960s, where they degraded the grade of the river and kind of separated the river from its floodplain. Next slide, please. And once again, it is now just terracing. We're not doing the flood walls or the levees, and we are tending more towards levees in the general project, but that will be part of a different phase of the project. Vista Narrows right now is focused just on terracing. Next slide, please. And this is a big slide because the agreement with the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe is to keep it under 2,400 CFS increase. And so this particular graph is showing that the actual increase with the new modeling and the new configuration that we're doing with the Meadows project is actually around 2,000 or less than 2,000 CFS. So it gives us some play, gives us about 400 CFS to work with, but also it's actually lower than what it was before, which is good. And the other big thing is that model that we're using now is more defensible. It's a federally approved, FEMA approved model, and it's had extensive review. And the Vista project has been under permit since 2020. So we are pushing all that on the permitting agency to say, look, we've done our homework, please move on with this. We've got to move on with this, including the letter of non-opposition from PLPT. So that's kind of where we're at with the mitigation projects agreement, and now moving forward into permitting. This is what we're promoting to try to bring this permitting to a successful close. Next slide, please. So, we also need to change the sequencing, as I mentioned already, and that is because of the breakout near wells will be sealed up, and it's a very small breakout, but it still has water. And the GSR area breakout, when that's sealed, that is a significant amount of water, several thousand CFS. And then there's also a breach at the airport. When you keep that all in the river, you're just putting more pressure on that reach, that Rock to McCarran reach. And Vista does not help that reach. It's too far upstream. It's not really lowering the water level there. Next slide, please. So what happens at the McCarran Bridge, for instance, is there's just a lot more water, like 8,000 CFS more water at that bridge. You can see that blue line is with project, the green line is with the current conditions. So a lot of that water goes into the airport area, into the industrial areas of Reno and Sparks, and it lowers the amount of water that's going through that reach. Now we have to handle more water. So we need to build that first or second after Vista, so that when we do the GSR and all those things, we don't create a big mess in the Rock McCarran area. Next slide. And this just kind of shows some of the areas where it's really critical. There's water coming off quickly where those arrows are into Sparks, into the the property we have at Rock McCarran there. And those areas in green are elevated velocities and depths. And, when they start turning yellow and bright yellow, those are actually dangerous. They're not just a property damage anymore. They're actually human threatening conditions. So we want to make sure that we have this under wraps and fixed before we cut off all those side channels and everything else that are flooding the airport and the industrial areas. Next slide, please. So where are we at with the Rock McCarran Meadows Flood Project? As you know, we've already started this, and we are actually on schedule with this thing. We're working on, they are working on the alternative study, the JUB team. Currently, we're expecting a draft probably next month, and we may have something for you to present to you about what we're finding. They're looking at they're looking at all kinds of configurations. They're looking at how that might impact the recreational facilities, both for nature type recreation and traditional recreation like ball fields. We're looking at a community meeting on the findings of the alternative studies in January to let the community have input and understand what's going on. And then we will probably pick a preferred alternative to bring to 30% design in February or March next year. So it's moving along, it's on schedule, and it's something that if we get the funding for, we could take it to design build as soon as next December. as long as we can get the permitting and things like that. So we're trying to accelerate this, not only because of the shortage of ball fields, but just because it needs to be the second project that we do, and it's a very important project, and until it's done, it's not doing any good for us. And so we want to get it done as soon as possible. Next slide, please. So in what they're doing, they are taking a smaller segment of that model, really tightening it up. This isn't the current breakdown of that model is even tighter than that. All those little squares are being modeled. And so they're looking at the new configurations. They're looking at configurations with that intermediate levee, without it, with maybe a shorter intermediate levee. They're trying to figure out what an optimum is and what works best for all the needs that we have. And so that's taking some time. They're also looking at, recreational, looking at habitat for fish, everything. So that has been a lot of work, and they should be ready next month with that. Next slide, please. And this just kind of, and we'll put this up on our website, this just shows all the little things that they're looking at as they go through their study. All the, like for instance, the terracing. Well, how wide will the terracing be? The placement of the different levees. Where will they be placed? All that kind of stuff. So they're looking at all of that to try to figure out an optimum. And they even have a scoring system for the different configurations, the pros and cons of different configurations. And all that will be presented, and then the public gets to weigh in to be able to tell us, like, maybe we see things that we didn't see, like at Wadsworth, a couple of things came up that we didn't catch. So it's very important to get the public involved later, early next year. Next slide, please. So with that, any questions are open. We will have a schedule next month on how all this is going to lay out. It's a little early for a schedule, but I think we're moving along quickly now. It's starting to accelerate with the agreement and with the authorization.
Thank you, sir. Any questions or comments? Yeah, Ms. Stewart.
Yeah, really exciting news, George, very exciting. So if I could summarize, what you're saying is that after Vista Narrows comes this. This will be the next, that's your
Yes.
reorientation of the timing of the project, that this would
Yes.
come next. And then a question I have is, you mentioned a public meeting. I assume you'll send us a notice of that or something?
Yeah, it'll be in January, so we'll
Yeah.
be very open about it next
Yeah.
meeting, about where we're
Yeah,
going to do it.
and even if you could go so far as send us a calendar appointment, that would be helpful, just to get it on our
Absolutely,
calendar.
yeah.
All right, thanks.
Awesome. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Ms. Hill.
I really commend George and the team for moving this forward, and I think it's just really imperative that this board stay on the timeline and try to push it forward. I think it's really important that we show that this project is moving forward, and kind of with our videos and with our outreach over the next year, kind of let the community know that, we're going to be moving some dirt.
Rangers, patrols and activities on the Turfma properties between Rock Boulevard and South McCarran Boulevard, conducted pursuant to the Reno Park Rangers interlocal funding agreement. Possible action to give direction to staff. Mr.
Good morning, Nathan Elliott, Parks and Recreation Director for the City of Reno, for the record. Thanks for having me here. As a part of the agreement that we had in July, we were to come back quarterly to give you updates about what the effectiveness of the program is, and to talk about how we can best communicate that to the board and with staff. So I have a little presentation that we put together. I will move through it relatively quickly so we can get to questions. I want to learn how we can better communicate and if this is an effective way through the report that hopefully y'all received. But we want to do this as good as possible for you. So next slide. Thank you. So just a brief update. Obviously, the two parties involved, our objective is to maintain safety and cleanliness along the Truckee River corridor, and specifically as a part of this agreement with the properties that TURFMA operates or maintains, rather. I'm going to give you an update on our encounters, citations, issues reported, and calls to Reno PD as a part of this quarterly report, and then funnel that up into an annual report. So next slide, please. As you can see, there's just a review of our role and our authority. In the agreement, we agreed to patrol 5 times a week. We have been making every effort to bump that up to 7 days. We think that has, I think, made it more effective and reduced the opportunity for footholds in the property and for encampments to develop. So we'll go through those statistics. Next slide, please. We met with Mike and with Danielle in July, on July 26th, and talked about the patrol and the protocols for reporting and things like that. And then we started our patrols the next Monday on July 29th. So July 29th, ideally a full quarter would have included the entire month of July, but we started as soon as we could after the agreement was in place. So we conducted 51 patrols over those 64 days, ending in September 30th, averaging 5.66 checks per week. We only had 5 days where there were significant issues either reported or observed during that time frame. There's the next slide, please. Those significant things were very much at the front end. There was some encampments that had already been in place and were in areas that maybe Green Vibes hadn't gotten to yet. So they were abandoned encampments, but we worked with a cleanup with Green Vibes to get those spaces cleaned up. There was an additional encampment in a little bit different area than we typically had seen, and Mike actually, I think, got it reported to him, and it was right. A neighbor saw it, so we cited issued a notice to that and removed that camp that was abandoned. And then again, other than those 5 days where there was any sort of interaction with encampments, the area was clear, and most of the time the people we observed there were Green Vibes, who are doing an awesome job, as I'm sure you're aware. Next slide, please. So how our reporting has worked, we provide a weekly report to Mike directly with some pictures each week of the area that we've patrolled, and try to specifically target consistent areas that when we started patrolling had the issues, so where people were more likely to encamp, and to show that through the consistent patrols those things hadn't been taking place since that time. And I'll show you a little, if you happen to read the report, some of the things that we looked at were warnings, notices, any trespass actions, was the site clear on arrival, those types of things. And we had no police calls necessary for enforcement beyond what the park rangers were able to enforce or to issue notice for. Next slide, please. Non-TURFMA, so just kind of that upriver effect that we hope is a benefit to the TURFMA property. In the time frame that was presented, 354 park and river patrols. We issued warnings to folks in our parks, could be for a myriad of things, but largely it's unsheltered issues. Moved to 9 citations and 3 exclusions. Removed debris directly, and this is just park rangers picking things up, throwing it in their truck before it becomes a problem. 159 cubic yards of that waste over that time period. Next slide, please. So here's just a few images, things that we share with Mike, just some examples. This was upon that first week, some of the encampments we found there. And next slide. And then there's just some examples of our kind of ongoing. This was actually, I think, last week's photos where, again, we try to get some consistent areas so that it's showing that it's remaining in that space, and we send those weekly, but we take those daily. So next slide. I think that might be it. So any questions and really any direction you could provide for us to help communicate better, to continue to show the efficacy of the program and make it clear that this is a good thing and this is what you were hoping for out of the agreement. We're very grateful for the opportunity, and it's, considering where it might go in the future, it's something that makes sense that our rangers help support when it becomes hopefully a recreation asset to the community as well. So, with that.
Thank you, Ms. Joliet. Any questions, comments? Yeah, Ms. Hill. Or Ms. Andriola, sorry.
Thanks for the report. I just have a question. The slide that had the numbers, the 354 and 600 and
yes,
those, statistics that you captured, are any of those folks like, are those unique numbers, or are they coming back? Or is there an indication of once, for instance, as a warning, as an example, are they not, are you tracking anyone that may be coming back, I guess is what I'm saying. So they may be in one location when you first gave the warning, and then are they coming back possibly at another time? So I just am curious how successful the warnings and or the citations are in no duplicative activity.
Right. I can't say with 100% certainty there's no duplicative activity, especially when it comes to the path, which isn't necessarily designated a park, where we have to do noticing differently than we would if it's a park where it's in regulation, where it's not legal. So if they do it in a park and it's not just a notice, then it moves very quickly through the process up to exclusion. And when they're excluded, they're out of our park system for 90 days. If they do it again, they're out of it for 180 days. If they violate that exclusion, they're trespassed indefinitely through criminal trespassing. So in the parks, doing great at reducing that duplicative effort. Along the path, which,
Abuse, if you want to call it that, or excessive trying to skirt around. That's all. I was just curious.
Sure. Yeah. And I think one of the things that we're working on within the Reno boundaries is trying to dedicate as much Reno controlled property as a park. So for instance, we did that in the downtown stretch between Virginia and Booth, that now the entire river path that is controlled by Reno, the property that is controlled by Reno, is a park. So that makes that easier. And so we're trying to expand from there, and that should help kind of close that envelope where it's not just noticing, and we can move quickly through citation and exclusion rather than not having to issue notices. So for instance, if the Turfma property became a Reno park, we wouldn't have to do noticing at that point. It would move directly to a citation, and we'd be able to track that based and not have to go back or take steps backwards.
Maybe just one more. So I guess as time goes on, there'll be some tracking of how either there's been success in terms of numbers decreasing over time. And so I'm looking forward to, seeing how this all works, and thank you and all the team for doing this. It's great, but I do think it's interesting because you're just measuring a certain part of this, right? We're only seeing from Rock to McCarran. And so it's interesting to see what kind of comparison it has even beyond that scope. Even though I know that you're reporting on this, it's just interesting because you've been doing it in other areas for quite some time, correct?
That's right. Yeah, the program's been in place for 3 years.
So have you seen the other areas? Have there been a decrease with the park rangers, or is it hard to tell?
It's, again, effectiveness within the parks. There's good effectiveness because our regulations and the municipal code supports their authority in those spaces. Along the river path, it's just public space, so it's cited, it's noticed differently if there's violations. So it has to move into a different space for the park rangers to have authority. So that's where, if we can move those into a park, if we could dedicate the entire river path or river corridor as a park, that gives us a lot better effectiveness through the park rangers. But so we are seeing that in parks, to answer your question, and we hope to see that improve as we incorporate more into the park.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Dewar?
Yeah, thank you so much for the report, Nathan. You asked, how can we tell the effectiveness? Well, I thought your pictures did a great job of the befores and afters. It was dramatically obvious, the impact.
And I just want to make sure we give, Green Vibes is an excellent partner, and there's a great rapport being built between the rangers, where if they have a cleanup that they're scheduling, we try to go down and make sure that it's clear first and give them support. Obviously, we're there every day, so we're pretty confident it's clear, but we still meet up with them, so it's great.
But the other thing I wanted to say is I thought over at Reno City Council, we designated all land along the river that the city owned as a park. So you're just distinguishing that the trail is not a park, so I'm confused a little bit.
Yeah, at the council meeting where we did move that in that direction was from that space from Virginia west to Booth Street, because we had contiguous control, so we wanted to start there.
Okay.
And then start, so for instance, the river path that goes behind or under the AT&T, that's an easement, so we'd have to get permission to change that. So that's a little bit longer.
Okay.
So we took our first step, which I think is a good step, but hopefully we'll continue to expand and incorporate more.
Well, do you have a plan, a time frame for all that? Because I thought, in order for this to be effective, that we need to complete it.
Right. So that would be a great thing to do as a part of a park district, but we are going to start moving the rest of the city properties in and the city controlled.
Right.
And so we can do that now that we feel confident that what we did in the downtown is appropriate and effective, which it seems to be. We'll move forward with the rest of the properties, even if it's not contiguous along the river path.
Right. Okay,
Yes.
but you do plan to continue?
Yes. Yeah.
I think this is something very important, a very important step to your point. I mean, we have rules and regulations. We don't need extraordinary citation authority or anything. Good, thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Lawson?
So who has the land behind the GSR? Whose land is that?
I'll double check, but I believe their parcel is as close to the river flood area as I can. I have to double check on that, so I'll get back to that. But that is a challenged
That's
area.
where they are now.
Yeah, we just did a cleanup over the last 2 days.
And when you say cleanup, does that mean you removed every trace of somebody being there, or you just took the trash out?
Every trace of someone being there. Like, is there micro trash potentially?
No,
Or
what I mean
like
is,
the
what I was told is the cleanup consisted of, you guys leave for a little while, we're gonna come in, pick up your trash, and then you can come back.
that should not be what's communicated. No, we go in and clear the encampment out, remove whatever property's left.
Tents, the garbage.
It should all go.
Shopping carts, all that goes.
It should all go, yeah. And then it gets, if it's left there, it's considered abandoned. Because that's why the noticing is important, that anything that they don't want removed or destroyed or not stored, yeah, that should happen.
You guys are doing a great job on our properties for this board. And what it's doing is pushing them every other place.
Yeah.
So we're just pushing people around. Obviously Sparks has been doing this for coming up on 4 years now.
Right.
And our side stays pretty clean, but we've just pushed them into smaller, larger groups, and that Grand Sierra is the latest one.
Yeah, and that's been a real challenge essentially with two rangers where we were last year, playing whack-a-mole really, Monday through Friday. And then, but I think again, with the support from this board and also from the county, who has allocated some funding, now we have that 7-day coverage and full-length patrol along the river. That doesn't mean they won't pop up somewhere else, but we want to really make the river a safe, clean space the entire way up and down.
Yeah,
Mr.
like I said, it's a phone calls that I've gotten on that, and I said, no, that's not flood property.
Well,
Sure. But
I
we
have an answer.
Go ahead.
I looked it up on Onyx, which is a good mapping program, but it's GSR and then it's Reno. There's this thin strip, Reno, between GSR and the river. And once you get into the river proper, that's the state of Nevada. What's that?
The homeless camps are right off of Glendale,
Glendale.
right by the
You're right.
bridge.
It's that same area. I just rode the river last week. They're on that south side,
Yeah.
That's the north side,
southwest.
south side, excuse me, you're right.
Yeah. So anyway, it's Reno, and on the other side, it's Sparks.
Mhm.
Right.
So Sparks is actually along the Truckee Meadows Water Authority, has a wider ownership than what Reno has on the south side. It's probably 2 or 3 times as wide.
They're not on the Spark side.
No, I understand. I'm just saying, we both.
People are confused as who has what, and we're doing this finger pointing thing. I'd like to see an overall plan. I mean, getting a little off the subject here, Mr. Walsh, but
Happy to be involved in that though. And,
but
yeah,
what you're doing is working, and thank
I
you.
appreciate that.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question.
Of course, Ms. Hill. Go for it.
Thank you. And great work, great presentation. Has the county helped you, Mr. Ouellette, give your park rangers access to HMIS?
I'll have to.
I don't think you can do that.
Yeah, I'll have to check. I don't think that's a step we're taking at this moment. I haven't heard any resistance for anything we've ever asked from the county. We've got a great relationship with Colleen and with the park ranger side for the county, but I'll confirm on that one.
Yeah, it's not parks. It's getting to the point of, I think Commissioner Andriola's very good question about return visitors. You would have a better idea if you had access to HMIS, and maybe that's just, if you don't mind, just shooting an email to whomever you're working with at the county on that, just so we can explore it. And maybe the Mayor Lawson is correct that you can't have access to it, but it would be, your data would be better if
Okay.
you had that access. And we would be able to track our people better, because those people always end up at the CARES campus or somewhere else, and the sheriff's office, and I know that Sparks Police, we're all working together on that HMIS data. So anyway, if you could look into that, that would be helpful, because I think it will be, we'll have a better idea of repeat people, and we'll know who they are.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that input.
Awesome. Any other questions or comments? See anyone? Is there any public comment on this? Perfect. And we are looking for a motion.
What, to accept the report?
I think to accept it, and I think Michelle Elliott also, Annie mentioned about communication, right? If we're-
We only need a motion if you're going to provide some direction.
Okay.
Can I just ask,
Yeah, Mr. Lawson.
is there any reason why we can't see the report that you get? I get a weekly update from our Hope team.
Sure, I would be more than happy. You
Number
could
of
either send that
contacts, all that.
directly to our board, or I can forward that. Either way, it's usually just a one-page email with some data. I'll be more than happy to forward
I'll
that.
be happy to show you what I get from our Hope team.
Yeah.
And then it just gives us information to see if we're maintaining, getting ahead, or getting behind.
Well, and those key metrics for all sides is a good thing. If we can
It
be
is.
measuring the same thing, that makes sense. So,
Should
yeah,
all be in the
appreciate that
same
feedback.
boat rowing.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah,
Mr. Wells, do we need to make a motion for that, or are we good?
Nope, we'll just do it.
okay,
Perfect.
all right.
Then we will move, thank you, Michelle Elliott.
Welcome. Thank you.
Item 7, public comment. Do we have any public comment? I don't see anyone jumping with joy. Mr. Beadarts, maybe? No? Not today? Okay, then we'll close public comment and go to item 8, board member comments, requests, and future agenda items. Anybody have anything? I see a whole bunch of no's. Perfect. Then we'll move on to item 9.
I do have one comment.
Okay, yeah, Ms. Stewart.
Another project that the Western Regional Water Commission grant is going to be funding is helping with the stream gauge that, for the flood project. The flood project still manages the overall, right, George?
Which stream gauge are you talking
The
about?
stream gauging that was
Okay.
brought in to flood.
Yeah, we have an agreement with USGS
Right.
for, yeah.
Bunch of stations, but there's a bunch of stations that are going to be added, and Western Regional Water Commission agreed to fund those. And so when I spoke to Danielle Henderson when I got in, and she's going to team up with Tom Flansburgh and Trina Magoon and discuss, make sure we have coordination on all those. And I was just thinking maybe not next month, but, in coming months, it would be good to get a report on those with flood season coming, just to get the board up to speed on what is the extent of the network and where do we need more help and what's working, what's not working.
Yeah, I probably should have said this in the announcements. In December, I'm planning on having a working group meeting where we talk about how we, as TURFMA, look at all the gauging and the entire network and how we visualize it, also how we use it to decide if it's, to help the county decide if it's an emergency or not, and what kind of trends we have in stream flow. So that will be a longer meeting with a lot of detail, and that will be available, and we could probably do a summary of that
Yeah,
for the
that'd be
meeting
great.
afterwards.
Yeah, like maybe in January, February, whenever. But it would be good for us to get up to speed on that and just have a better understanding, since so many agencies potentially involved.
Anyone else? Cool. Then we will move to item 9, adjourn at 9:52. Have a great weekend.
Okay.
I'll see you back.
Recording stopped.